Thank you. Yeah, mate.
Absolutely.
And you're Haley?
Yes.
Oh, I'm Brian. Nice to meet you.
All righty. Yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. So introducing myself, my name is J.C. Gross. I'm the sales executive at Fort Worth branch. We're just right there off of Hewlin, so about 10 minutes away from here. This is Haley Gann. She is our Mansfield rep. Yeah, so first and foremost, I want to thank you guys for having us in here today. Super excited. This is my first time doing a CE class here, so super excited to be here with y'all. And yeah, I'll start by telling y'all a little bit about myself. So I was born right here in the heart of the DFW, and I grew up around the real estate industry. Both my parents have been loan officers for about 25 years apiece. So naturally growing up around that environment, real estate was always something that interested me. Right after I graduated from college, I went and took a job working with them, first as a processor and then as an LO. And I remember on my first day, my dad called me into his office, told me something that would change the way that I looked at real estate for the rest of my life. He brought me into his office, sat me down, and he was like, dude, if you're going to be in this industry, you need to get one thing through your head, and that is that we are here to help others and make their lives easier. Your paycheck and your needs are not a priority, and if you think that they are, you will not make very long in this industry, and just go ahead and start sending out your job resume right now to other places. Like I said, that hearing those words kind of changed the way that I would look at the industry forever. I'm so happy and so blessed to be in a position where I get to help so many people along the way of their home buying process, whether that be the buyers, the sellers, lenders, and of course, the agents. How we help you guys is we will share, tools, any marketing tools, any farming tools for you guys, sharing our resources, market or flyers, folders, anything that you may need for a house. Of course, CE classes, and most importantly, pairing you guys with an escrow officer that'll deliver you and your clients a smooth and efficient closing. I know I've gotten a chance to meet a couple of you guys, but if we haven't had the chance to meet yet, yeah, I'd love to meet with y'all for coffee, lunch, just get to know a little bit more about you guys and how exactly we can go about helping you and your clients. So, that being said, don't know if you want to say anything, but
Yeah, I can give you a brief background. I know you guys are mainly Fort Worth area, but we're so close and I'm sure we'll cross paths at some point. So I was in education for 5 years before this. I always say, like, it was so much fun. It was a great experience, but I love working and servicing adults now, especially high school age kids. So this is actually only my third month in the industry. And so I grew up around education. My mom's a teacher and my father is a real estate agent for Remax, so this world isn't totally foreign to me. But I've just gotten to spend a lot of time shadowing and learning, and so I'm excited to be here today and hear all this speak as well.
So that being said, we'll pass it over to you.
I'll tell you about me, and then we're going to go around the room. I have been in the business for 30 plus years. I was a closer for 21 years, and I've been in management for 9 years. So I've been boots on the ground, know what y'all go through. I loved working with real estate agents. When I got into business, I worked with a builder. That's kind of how I got my teeth and started developing some business because I got the buyer's agents from the builder side and said, that's the route I want to go. Thankfully, that happened and I made it through 2007 and 8, which I don't know if any of y'all were around during that time period, but it was a lot of fun. If you made it through that, congratulations. You can make it through anything. Actually,
Larry is working. I sent a Slack to in our.
Can you turn it on?
Oh. I need to
Patty, mute yourself. Thank you.
So I kind of grew my business as a closer by working with newer real estate agents. I just think education is really important and learning from the ground up. These classes that I've put together were things that some of them are just because they're mandatory contract CE classes. I won't lie, because we know y'all need that. I like for my classes to be interactive. So if you have questions, if you're wondering something, just interrupt me. We're going to go over the very exciting paragraph 6 of the contracts that I know you have all read and know dearly. Most people look at that and just see who pays for the title policy and move on, you know. So we're going to dive into that a little bit deeper today, but I look forward to sharing some information with you guys. So we'll get going. Oops, a little fast. Okay. So we're on paragraph 6, and I'm not going to just read this to you, but I am going to go through it kind of paragraph by paragraph and talk a little bit about how it works with what a commitment is. Before we get too far into it, what kind of experience level do we have in here? We have a variety from new, brand new, don't have any idea what I'm saying, all the way to I've been doing this and don't ever read that part of the contract. Okay. All right. Well, that helps. That helps me just to kind of know what audience it is. So, of course, the very first thing that you probably are used to looking at the most as seller is to furnish to buyer at either seller or buyer's expense an owner's policy issued by, that one should always say Old Republic Title Company. As you are probably familiar with, traditionally a title policy is the seller's expense. It is negotiable. I have been through markets where we saw buyers paying for title insurance. Usually that's when it's a hot buyer's market and there's just a ton of multiple, or a hot seller's market rather. When there's multiple offers, somebody's trying to make their offer look more desirable, we will see time periods where a buyer is willing to pay for that or more, offer to pay for it to make their offer look better. That title policy is something that's issued after closing. It is not something that's issued until they actually own and close on the property. What is provided before that is what's called commitment. The title commitment basically is our promise to defend ownership and liens on the property. So the way I always explained title insurance to people when I closed was, if you close on this property and somebody knocks on your door tomorrow and says, my grandma owned this and I didn't get my share, you call the title company. Somebody knocks on the door and says, I did roof repairs on this and I didn't get paid and I filed a lien and we owe me this money, you call the title company. The basic title insurance just covers ownership and liens. We're going to talk a little bit about survey coverage as we get into this paragraph, because several years ago, TREC decided to add the option to add survey coverage into the contract. It's been in the commercial contract for years and years and years, but it made its way into the residential contract probably 7 to 10 years ago. It might be a little bit shorter than that. I'll go through that paragraph because it's one of those real elusive paragraphs that nobody really knows which box to mark or why they're marking which box. So the title policy is issued by the title company after closing. There's a separate paragraph in here that talks about the commitment and when it's required to be delivered. We'll go through that a little bit as well. And then these lists, this 1 through 9 that is under 6A, lists everything that are exceptions to the title policy. And most people go, well, what is an exception? What does that mean? What that means is anything listed right there, and it's all listed in the commitment, is not insured. So anything, if you're familiar with the title commitment at all and you've seen them, you should get copied on them as the buyer's agent when the buyer receives them. It's made up of 3 pieces. It's made up of Schedule A, B, and C. And most people who know anything about a title commitment will look at Schedule C to see what liens are on the property. Nobody ever really looks at Schedule B in the residential world. In the commercial world, Schedule B is huge because they care about what's not insured. But just so you're aware, the way that I explain Schedule B to people, even if you're not going to look at it, is anything listed on there, it's not covered. So it's really important to know that what is not part of the title insurance, if the buyer is asking a question, you can always refer them to your closer, and you should. You're not supposed to be an expert at the title commitment, but they'll never, it'll happen. They'll call you on a Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock, and you know, get the title company right there. So just having some basic knowledge of it. So the first thing that's not covered is restrictive covenants. So those are your deed restrictions. So basically the title company is giving a commitment saying, hey, we're going to issue a policy, but we're not going to cover any violations to deed restrictions. So if you have a buyer who, where that comes into play pretty heavily, is if you have a buyer who has a specific need and a specific use for the property, You want to be sure that they understand that the title company is not telling them, yes, you can use it for this purpose. They're given a copy of the deed restrictions with the commitment. Those purposes, I've seen it where it's been, like one example I have was a closing where our buyer was a police officer. And the deed restrictions for his neighborhood said that you could not drive a work vehicle. So he could not buy that house because they considered his police car a work vehicle. That did go over very well.
That is super
Work?
interesting. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some deed restrictions in place.
How do you afford the house if you're not working? I mean, like, that's just dumb.
Yeah, you just couldn't, and, you know, and of course he came to the title company, he's like, well, can I drive, is my police car considered a work vehicle? And we're like, we're not gonna tell you that. You gotta call, this one had a homeowners association. Because not every neighborhood that has deed restrictions has a homeowners association.
Right.
Most neighborhoods have deed restrictions and they may not have a homeowners association. Then those are only enforceable by the neighbors. So
I live in a neighborhood that's deed restrictions.
A lot of lake houses are like that too, even though they don't have HOAs, but they have a lot of deeds.
yes. It all.
It's basically a civil issue at that point. If your neighbors get together and say, hey, per your deed restrictions, you have to have your RV, you know, out of sight, out of mind, kept on the property, but we can't see it, then basically neighbors have to get together and basically petition or file suit with legal counsel to enforce it.
How do you get it removed?
Deed restrictions,
Yeah.
yeah.
From the previous owner?
I would have to be from the original developer.
Or the whole neighborhood. If the whole,
Yeah.
if the developer has sold out the whole neighborhood and the whole neighborhood says, we don't want these deed restrictions anymore, then there's legal documents. that
There's a
they
lot
have
of
to
neighborhoods in
remove.
Parker County that are deed only.
Are you in Parker County?
I am.
Where are you at?
Out by the lake.
I'm in Springfield.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm like off of 730 in Trollwood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Digress. But yes, so deed restrictions, they're important to know, especially again, if there's a homeowners association, because they are going to enforce them. We also don't ensure that future taxes are paid. We only ensure, of course, that taxes from the day of closing prior are covered. We don't insure new liens. So if they're getting a new lien on the property, we're not going to give any defense. Title insurance works from the day you close backwards. It's one of the few insurances that works in reverse. So if somebody moves into the property and then and we've had people call us, they said, oh, I got a judgment filed against me and that covered under my title insurance. No, it's against you. And it was after you owned the property. So just know title insurance that works from the day of ownership all the way back to the original ownership from the pre-planning when it was just land. We're not going to cover utility easements. Every property has, most every property, definitely every residential lot and block is going to have easements on the property. And what an easement is, the way that I always describe that in closing to a buyer is you own that property, but the city or utility company has certain rights to that area. So you can't just do whatever you want in that property. You can, but if it needs to be removed, the city or the utility company is going to remove it and they don't have to replace it. So if you're putting up a shed in the back property, it's important to know where the easements are. A portable shed is one thing. You can move it out of the way and move it back. They don't just come in and destroy it. They will say, hey, your shed's in our easement. But a shed on a concrete slab, you're running a bigger risk of, hey, we're going to drill up this concrete and then when we're done, good luck to you, get it fixed because it's their easement. You own it, but they have rights to it. So title insurance is going to not cover anything that's in an easement. Mineral reservations, I think that's a whole other conversation, not as pertinent today as it was 10, 15 years ago. But I know people do still reserve mineral rights. If somebody's married and we have a standard exception as to marital rights to the property, where if one person buys the property in their name solely, we're not saying that the other person doesn't have rights to it. We're just saying this is how it's settled. And then there's a standard printed exception as to waters, tidelands, beaches, and streams. We're going to talk a little bit more about place in paragraph 6 for that. Paragraph 8 is the one that you'll probably want to know the most about. Paragraph 8 is elusive to people who have been in the real estate for years and years and years. So does anybody have a box they just pick?
I think fire. Yeah.
Do you pick will not or will be?
Size.
Depends on the size.
Yeah, that's what.
I know,
I know.
I know, nobody really knows.
Existing, is that what it is?
I was just told that if it's in a plan development already, whether it's all, not to worry about it, but to worry about
Wait, so we'll be over.
the second one, because if the shortages are off, because I had it happen, and they were quite a bit off.
Yeah.
And they
you
had
know,
always check fire. Title told me always check fire, because it's easier for the buyer to respond when the seller's gone. After it's closed, there's no way to get in touch with that seller, is what they told me.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I've got
Yeah.
a contract right now that.
Yeah.
The seller's paying title, but then my buyer is paying for the additional
For sure.
charge.
Okay.
Yeah, I had that.
So let's talk first about what it means. So there is a paragraph in the title commitment, in every title commitment, no matter where you close in the state of Texas, that says that we will, and I always say anything on Schedule B, this is on Schedule B, the one nobody ever looks at. Anything on Schedule B, if you're reading it, I always kind of tell people, start your sentence with title does not cover, and then read the paragraph. Because then you're like, okay, title does not cover this. It helps it make more sense. Because title commitments are written in Greek. I know that. But what it says is we will not cover any discrepancies, conflicts, or shortages in area or boundary lines, or any encroachments or protrusions, or any overlapping of improvements. Now, what does that mean? That means and I said when we started this, that title insurance covers ownership and liens. It has no coverage for you on the face as to that survey. It literally is just for ownership and liens. We do have an option when we choose to amend this paragraph, when you choose will be amended, it adds coverage, it adds defense to the buyer for boundary lines. So it all has to do with the property lines. So basically what happens, it's only available if there's a survey. You have to have a survey to have boundary line coverage. But it basically says that if the house is not within the property lines, if the shed is not within the property lines, if the garage is sticking out a little bit over the property line, and it's not shown on the survey that way, that then the title company would be in a position to defend that.
Does that increase the price of the coverage of the insurance on the disclosure at the end?
The cost of the insurance is based on the sales price.
Okay,
No
so
matter
it doesn't
what.
get increased just because we add that extra coverage.
Yes, it does.
It's like a couple $100.
Yeah, it's like $300.
Yeah, it actually
It's
got
on a
this.
separate line.
So here's the next slide, and it tells you right here, the cost of the coverage is 5% of the owner's policy.
So does that add a line on the final
It should.
disclosure? Okay.
It should, yes. Some people bundle it, but
So 130.
Patty's got it.
Hey, Patty.
So, hi, so on that coverage, typically what I do is when you look at the survey or if there's private remarks from the seller that says, like, they know the fence is questionable, would a new survey be required to show where that, and I'm saying this because we're putting up a fence and we're moving our fence a little bit because of a huge tree. So if I were to sell my house and I think that that fence might be a little bit over on my neighbor's line, but my old survey doesn't show it, what would title or lender do?
what we would do, and every title company is different in the way they handle things, but what we would do is it would be required to be disclosed on the T-47. And you would just say, fence on north property line moved 3 feet or something, like along those lines. And title would not cover that because even with the new survey wouldn't matter. If it's a known issue, title is not going to walk into it and say, okay, we're covering that. It would be an exception. It would not be covered in the title policy.
So don't do that.
So would it be
But-
covered with that additional coverage if you say it will be amended? So let's use another real life scenario. They build a barbecue area in their backyard and it looks to be on their property and they draw it in on the survey as a known change, the
Right.
survey's accepted, does that coverage need to be added in order for, if any part of that were maybe not on the property?
Yes, yes. So it is for unknown matters. So specifically,
Unknown matters.
if you're using an existing survey and somebody has made a change and they disclose on the T47 and they draw on the survey and everything appears to be in the property lines, and they add the coverage and then find out the buyer gets a call from the seller 2 weeks after or the neighbor 2 weeks after they close and says, your barbecue concrete is on my property. But the survey that we closed on and the T47 that we closed on did not disclose that that was the case, then it could be a claim. So it's only for unknown matters. It is not for something that is known. And title
Okay.
actually takes what we do on every property that we close is our examination department pulls up Google Earth and takes a look, especially if we have a survey with a T47 with changes. And if we see that, if we can tell that, we all know Google Earth is not always current. So the barbecue pit may not even show on there because the picture was done a year ago before that. But if it does show on there and we can clearly see that that barbecue pit is over the property line, then it would be an exception in the title policy. So the main thing to remember is it's for unknown matters. If it is known on the survey, we're not going to say, oh, okay, we know this fence is not on the property line, but we're going to cover it anyway.
So an unknown matter would be what?
So this slide is a few examples of that. So if a neighbor claims that insured improvements are over the property line. So the example you just gave was a very good one. So let's say somebody built a barbecue pit, we'll just stick with that. And they didn't think they were over the property line. And the survey, even a new survey didn't show it was over the property line. But it actually was, because the survey is just an opinion. You can get two surveys from two different surveyors and they could look different. I know that sounds crazy, but it's very true. That's what a survey is. So if they have created a protrusion of part of their improvement off of the property line, and unknowingly, they did not believe that it was, and the survey did not reflect that it was, then that could be a claim against this additional coverage. Or vice versa, if a neighbor has improvements that are encroaching into your property line that were done prior to the time of the purchase. If the surveyor made errors in locating boundary lines,
That's the one.
and that's what happened to you, the boundary lines were wrong on your survey.
Very well.
Yes. And that does happen. And so I've had a lot of people say, well, if you're getting a new survey, you don't have to worry about that coverage. I disagree with that because, again, a survey is just an opinion. So the thing that I kind of go back to is if I were a realtor, which I'm not, but if I were, I would always amend that paragraph because the cost of it is so minimal. Yeah. The likelihood of needing it is slim. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not, especially if you're doing residential lot and blocks. But the one time that you need it and you didn't select that for your buyer, who are they going to turn to and say, why didn't you get me this? They're going to look at you and say, why didn't you get me this?
And I always ask the seller to pay for it.
Yes.
And the cost of it, so the example I use here on this slide on the second one is a $250,000 sales price. Not that you can buy anything for $250,000 anymore. The cost of the title policy is $1,521. So the cost of this coverage would be $76. So the alternative, if they don't have this coverage and they have a dispute, is they can call an attorney. Well, they're not going to call an attorney for $76, but they can call the title company for that coverage. So it is protecting you in a way to protect that buyer client. And, I've seen agents even get into back and forth. Well, we're not going to pay that. We're not going to pay that. But then when you realize how much it costs, it's usually not worth going to that. But it is all for unknown. It is not for anything known. If the survey shows it, it means they're not going to have coverage. There'll be an exception in the title. So when you check the box that says we will amend that paragraph to read shortages in area, so will not be amended or deleted from title policy means buyer has no survey coverage. They have no guarantee that their boundary lines are accurate or that anybody's going to defend their boundary lines. When you change it to will be amended to read shortages in area, that adds coverage. So you're adding additional coverage by taking something away, which sounds weird, but that's how title insurance works, because you're taking away an exception. Does that make it even
Yes.
more clear as that?
That was a really good explanation, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. I have closers I've worked with for 25 years that are still like, want more explanation about that paragraph because it's very confusing. But the short is when you choose in the truck contract to amend shortages, you're adding. Okay. So this one, actually, I'm gonna go back to that, does say, and it's real clear, no coverage is available for matters shown on the survey or matters not. So next is commitment delivery. That's something that just happens in the background. You should, it's technically the seller should furnish the buyer a commitment if the seller has no idea how to prepare a title commitment, obviously. So that is a title company function. Be sure in this, I will tell you just kind of a side note. One of the things I always, worked when I worked with my realtors was make sure that notices paragraph in the contract has information for delivery. So you want to have at least, ideally you would have the buyer's email address in the buyer's notices, seller's email address in the seller notices. That's how you effectively delivered all of this. That's how you legally have the, somebody's trying to join us, on Teams. That is how you effectively make delivery. So if you just give us a buyer email, we're going to use that, obviously. But if it comes down to a legal question and the buyer notices paragraph is blank, it's harder to defend delivery because the only way to make delivery to the buyer, if the buyer's paragraph is blank, is hand delivery, which we know doesn't happen. Everything happens electronically these days. So there's a 20-day window. It should not take 20 days to get a title commitment out of a title company. Usually our title plant runs about 3 to 5 days on getting title work done. It can be done faster if need be. If there's a rush, if you have a cash deal closing in 5 days, we can usually make that happen without a problem as long as it's not 150 acres out in Nowhere County, Texas. Those take a little bit longer. But if we're talking residential properties, line block, or even rural properties within the Metroplex, those don't take that much time. And then they're also to provide with that copies of the deed restrictions, and those are for the buyer to review to make sure there's nothing limiting them from doing what they want to do with this property in this neighborhood. If the commitment and exception documents are not delivered to the buyer in the 20 days, there's an automatic 15-day extension. So title really should never slow you down as far as your deliveries. The only time I have seen that, I'm not going to say I've never seen it take that long. All of your national title companies are only licensed in certain counties, which is going to be a lot of counties. Like I don't even know how many counties we have. Counties that you may not ever even have heard of or work in. But if you do get real rural in the more rural areas, way out of the country, a lot of times the title companies, even the national are not licensed there. So we have to order title work from another party. We order title work from that county. They have kind of an anomaly in the county. And you have to, and honestly, Parker County was that way for years, but we've kind of
James?
Parker, yeah, we're like.
You know what the other county is? Hood County.
Hood County.
Oh my God.
Hood County is pretty locked down. We now actually, I believe, are licensed in Hood County, but it took years. I grew up in Granbury, so that was one of the references for getting title work out of there was always interesting. But if you're dealing with acres and acres and acres of land, if you're dealing with a residential lot and block, you really should not have any, should not prevent you from the time. In the last sentence, if the covenant and exception documents are not delivered within the time required, so 35 days or 3 days prior to closing, that's the caveat there, the buyer may terminate the contract and the earnest money will be refunded to the buyer. So it's important to know that the buyer did get it from a listing perspective to make sure they're not getting it out in the contract. There we go. Okay, the survey paragraph. Couple of things on here. So you got 3 options, and I always start with options 2 and 3 because they're the easiest. Option 2 says the buyer's paying for a new one. Option 3 says the seller's paying for a new one. Most of the time we see option 1 as what is marked. I've been in the business so long that when I started, they did not accept existing surveys. It wasn't even an option. You got a new survey with every transaction. As a title professional, I will tell you, I wish it was still the same way, because especially now, we get surveys from 30 years ago, and we get a fax of a copy of an email of a fax that has shrunk over the years, and they're hard to read. But we do review and approve them for coverage. We don't have a time frame at Old Republic on how old they can be. Some companies do. Some companies put a 20-year mark on them. But we don't have a time frame as long as there have been no changes as far as unapproved changes. So we do accept changes to the property. The fence moving is a perfect example. As long as it's disclosed on T47, then we will approve it. And we will probably not insure anything that has to do with the fence being off the property line. If it's not on the property line, we're not going to insure that. And that happens all the time. It's always a question of whose fence is it. If it's on the property line, is it my fence or is it their fence? We don't really get into answering that because the property line is shared. So a fence is shared. So, you know, maybe you put it a little bit inside your property line if you want it to be your fence. But in this paragraph, what I would point out is within the date of this contract, seller shall furnish to buyer the existing survey and a T47, or now I believe it says T47. Next sentence is a really important sentence. If the seller fails to furnish the survey or affidavit within that time period, buyer shall obtain a new survey at seller's expense. So let's suppose you go on a listing, and a really high volume agent who was doing this, and we had a long conversation about don't do this, and she was like, oh, so we get the contract. It says within 3 days, seller's going to provide the survey in T47. The box is marked under here for buyer, and we'll talk about that sentence next. But I contact the listing agent. I'm like, hey, we need the survey in T47. Oh, they've added a pool. I know y'all are going to reject it. We're not going to. Don't worry about it. Who's paying for the new survey? Seller. Yes. For years, a lot of people just thought that box underneath said who was paying for it if we never got the survey. That's not what it says. What that last sentence says is that if we get the survey in T47 and we reject it, then the buyer or seller pays for it. If we never get it, if it never comes, the seller is paying for the new survey. Where another one of my clients was see if I can tell this story effectively. The buyer agent and the listing agent were not seeing eye to eye, we'll just say. The buyer agent didn't realize that this was back when MLS dictated commission. And the buyer agent was getting 2% and the listing agent was getting 3%. So we're almost to closing, getting preliminary settlement statements out. Buyer agent calls and says, hey, I'm getting 3%. And calls us. And I'm like, well, that's not what the contract says, because it said it was disclosed on page 10 or whatever page that is, that the buyer getting 2%. So I called the listing agent. I'm like, hey, what's the deal? Are they, no, it was listed at 2%. Well, buyer's agent was very unhappy about that. Get it? But it was what it was. So she started just kind of looking for things. Well, the seller had provided a survey in a T47 and it was approved, but it was after the number of days in the contract. The buyer's agent realized that and said, we want a new survey. And of course, she told us, and we said, well, the survey's approved. We don't care. It wasn't delivered in time for this to happen. It wasn't delivered in the number of days in the contract. It was strictly out of spite. That's all I can say.
Wow.
That would be nice.
Of course, the listing agent, yeah, I think that's what the listing agent said. The listing agent ended up paying for the new survey herself because she felt like she had put her clients in a position where they were now obligated to pay for a new survey that wasn't necessarily needed. So that time period is really important in delivery. So even if you've got a survey that you're like, no way is title going to accept this, send it. Send a survey in T47 in that time period. Let us reject it. Occasionally we do have to say no. I mean, another example of, go ahead.
Victoria had a question. Victoria, are you online?
Question, and I
There
think
she
you
is.
kind of answered it, about the fit.
Oh, you freaked out.
It's on. Can you hear me? Sorry. Neighbor has put their fence up, and it does cross over to your. And let's say you don't know that when they do that, that it is technically work on the coverage if I were to go and sell my house.
Victoria, send it to me in text because your
Okay.
your mic is going off while we're talking. But go ahead and send it to me, and I'll ask Autumn after she finishes this next segment.
Perfect.
Another example of when an existing survey might not be accepted that I had personally. I owned a property in Mansfield. I lived in Mansfield for 25 years and had a property where one day the city knocked on my door and said, hey, we want to buy an easement. I was on a floodplain and they wanted an easement across the back. And being in title, I knew I went ahead and sold them an easement. I was happy to take their money to let them access 5 feet and back 40 of my property. But I knew I was going to probably have to get a new survey because now there's a new easement. Nothing else on my property had changed, but that easement was not disclosed on my survey. When I went to sell my house, they marked this box with that I was going to provide my survey in T47. I did, knowing it was going to be rejected, which it was, because title looks at every easement that's been filed and compares it to the survey to make sure they match. So when title came back, they said, oh, you got this survey from 5 years ago. Your survey's 10 years old. We need a new survey. Buyer had to pay for that because buyer's expense was marked in that paragraph. Had I not provided the survey in T47, I would have been stuck paying. So just
I had one got denied because it didn't have a stamp.
yes.
Like their survey didn't have a stamp. And I was like,
That's a big deal.
yeah.
I had one rejected because the property line was 12 feet into the pool.
That's problematic.
Yeah. That's a fun one. Good lesson.
Patty, you have a question?
Yeah, so I made this mistake on one of mine recently that the seller did not want a survey. Or I'm sorry, the buyer did not want a survey. I represented the seller, and I thought if you go back to that slide real quick that you just had up, I thought that if you had to check something here so that no survey was provided. So if no survey is going to be provided to the buyer, you just leave all of those completely blank.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. that
Okay,
just-
I made the mistake and checked C2 with 0 days. And title was like, you need a survey right now. I was like, oh, that was my fault.
Yeah.
Because
there
I
is
thought
no
it read like the buyer will get a new survey if they want to, and if they don't get a survey, then that's their problem. But that was 100% wrong. So that was a learning experience a couple of weeks ago for me.
Yeah, if title were to get the contract without any box being marked, they would probably confirm just to make sure that, the way I always explain title is We only close anything by following instructions. We have lenders closing instructions, we have the contractors our instructions, all different ways. So if our instructions had nothing marked, we would assume there is no survey.
Victoria's question, if a neighbor puts up a fence that encroaches on your property, but you're not aware of, and you sell your house, would the shortages paragraph cover that?
It very well could, because if you got a new survey, no. Because the new survey would show that the fence was within the property line. But if you use an existing survey and you did not know that the fence was encroaching, then it could be claimed.
Alternatively, if you do not know that it encroaches and have tried to remedy with neighbor, but they refuse, would shortages coverage help?
Because it's known, even if it wasn't disclosed, if the title company was able to determine that it was known and not disclosed, it would not be covered.
That answer your question, Victoria?
Yes, thank you.
So can I ask a movie question here?
Sure.
When you say that a claim can be made, what happens?
We're an insurance company, and that gets lost a lot because so much of what title does is escrow and closing services. But our actual function is an insurance company. Just like filing a claim with your homeowner's insurance or your health insurance, we refer you to our claims department. They look, and usually they'll get a copy of your policy and a copy of whatever the issue is, and determine if it's covered under your policy.
And what do you mean by covered? Like the property line is the property line.
The property line is the property line, but how much does it cost to move the fence?
Okay, so that part of it.
Yes,
The
up
cost.
to the
Okay.
cost of the sales.
Got it.
Yeah, it's
I was wondering, like,
it's actual loss or damage. So, I mean, we've paid claims. That's what we're there to do.
yeah.
We've had to move sheds. It's been many years, but not us physically, obviously.
Yeah. Is there a statute of limitations on that to file a claim? The reason I ask is because my mother was just hit with a fence line thing. And
Does she still own the property?
Yeah. And she paid for it out of her own pocket.
Your title, was it from before she owned the property, or has it happened since she bought it?
Before.
She could have a claim.
Okay.
Yeah. I can never say,
Sure.
I can never say it would be a claim or it would be a
Right.
covered claim, but she could have a claim. She could
Okay.
definitely reach out to the title company and say, this happened. They'll look at her coverage and tell her if it's a covered claim.
Okay.
So if she paid
Shoot your
the.
shot. Yeah, this is a $3,000 fence move.
Yeah, we're sending an email to the title company.
Okay.
And literally, they will ask for, what are the details? The more details that she gives them, I bought the house on this date, here's a copy of my title policy, and here's what happened.
Yeah.
And they're just a bunch of claims adjusters and attorneys that go through it and determine that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
And yes, to answer your question too, just kind of answer it, but not really. Title insurance is good as long as you own it.
Okay.
So whether it's 1 year or 50 years, the same, and it's a one-time premium.
Right,
Okay, and you
but
close and that's
the
it.
amount of time that you have to
I
file a
don't believe
claim.
there's a statute of limitations. for
Okay.
claim filing. I've never heard of one
Okay,
in
perfect.
30 years, so.
This is a silly question,
No,
but like, what if your title company goes out of business?
the state of Texas Department of Insurance steps in.
Like builder warranty.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm just saying, like,
It
you
happens.
say like 30 years, and you're like, oh, well, a Republic title doesn't exist anymore. Who holds that policy?
Yeah, the state of Texas has. And that's another reason though, and you can imagine that dealing with the state of Texas versus dealing with an insurance company is totally different. So it's really important who you close with, because you want them to be here. We've been around over 100 years, so we're not going anywhere.
Okay, cool.
But we also see them popping up on every corner.
Yeah,
you know, and
absolutely.
go
No, I
around
mean,
them
and
too,
I mean,
so-
I've been in the industry long enough to see the flash of the pan.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like,
To see the what?
just the flash of the pan, title companies that pop up and like during the pandemic really popular.
Oh, yeah,
They've been going, and now you're like, who?
I thought COVID was gonna bring us down. Instead, I think we all thought that.
I've never heard that.
Me either.
It's probably a hill.
I think you should.
No, she just said, great question. No, we're good.
I'm like, all right.
We can talk about that later.
So this slide kind of goes back to what you were saying about you had a survey that was declined because it didn't have a seal or a stamp on it. That's a big deal. This is just kind of for your information. So what a lot of times we'll get is the listing agent will call us before it goes under contract and before we have title work and says, hey, is the survey going to work? Well, we can't really say until we get title work, but we can look at it and tell you if it's not going. And what we can say, yeah, everything looks good. Once title comes in, we can verify it's good. It's about a 95% success rate being able to tell you that, unless they sold an easement or something like that. So it's good to know what those things are. And this is kind of a little checklist that we use that we can look at a survey and go, yeah, it looks good, or no, it's missing this. So it's got to have a full legal description. That means lot, subdivision, in addition to the city of blank, and a plat reference, which they all have, or they should have if it's a good survey. Now, back in the day, I know I'm dating myself, but people would fax legal size surveys and it would come through as letter. Yeah,
My husband will enter there.
Oh, is he really? Okay. But the legal size, if they used a legal and they faxed it to somebody who received it on letter, it would cut off the top or the bottom. And it never failed that it cut off the legal description, because the legal description is always at the top or the bottom. So then it actually says, or if they scanned it on letter and didn't shrink it to the right size, it would not show. So full legal description, the surveyor has to have signed it and dated it and stamped it. There has to be a north arrow. We had to reject surveys because the north arrow is missing. And that's really important because there's no way to reference the property lines if you don't have a compass on the survey to know which one is which. This says less than 20 years old. I need to update my slide because we did go through a period where we were less than 20 years old. We have eliminated that rule when we don't have an age. So as long as no easements have changed, no boundary lines have changed, no new plats, things like that, we can accept that. Cannot be a plot plan or a grade survey. Those are usually builder things that you might get. Sometimes that when somebody's buying a new construction, they'll get a plot plan, and that's kind of like where it's going to be. It's not actually the survey. It doesn't have the driveway and the flat work. It literally will say plot plan or grade survey on there. You see those are not going to work. You can still submit it and get rejected if you're representing a listing agent, but just know. And it's got to be legible. Sounds like it should be simple. New surveys, just kind of talking about new surveys. Again, every title company handles this differently. Typically, the way that we handle it is it's kind of a catch-22 because you've got your little contract that says new survey within 5 days. Well, who wants to pay for a new survey in the first 5 days of the contract? Probably nobody. There's still an option period. We're not going to pay for a new survey. The buyer's loan's not approved, appraisal's not in. There's so many different variances. Most title companies are not going to just order the survey, even if it says 5 days in there. So talk to your title company, find out what their process is. They're going to require, most of them will require that somebody approve ordering that survey if they're going to order it that quickly. Go ahead.
If there's a delay, it took us, depending on the location, they were weeks out to be able to do the appraisal survey.
Yeah.
So they said they were delayed. Is that, is there any way? Maybe that's a dumb question.
What was it again?
Like if that's gonna be delayed, can you, I'm
Close
trying to figure out
without,
how I'm wording it.
close without the survey and wait.
Yes, like is there, like, do you see that happen where they do extensions or they
We see,
work around it if there's a large, like a long delay?
we would either see a contract extension for the date. If it's cash, the survey's not required on cash. So title company doesn't care as long as they're not asking to be.
If it was cash and the buyer didn't care and she said, I don't want the survey. Because
They
it
could've
weeks
closed.
out. So
And now-
that's okay.
The only time we might not be willing to close on a cash deal without a survey is if it's meets and bounds, where if it's acreage and maybe we're not confident that the last vesting deed had the right legal description. But most of the time, because just remember from a title perspective, it's only ownership and liens. We really don't care about the survey. We ensure the legal description unless you're amending shortages in area. Mending shortage is an area, then you can't close, get the survey and get amended shortages. So yeah, it kind of goes through timeframes to the surveys, 3 to 5 business days, depending on volume and location. When you get out in the country, you get out in smaller towns, it's going to take longer to get services, just like everything else. Around $600 for a standard lot and block. If you have an acreage or meets and bounds, I used 1,200 as my bottom number for a meets and bounds survey. I've seen surveys up in the $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 ranges. It just depends how much land you're talking about. The more land you're talking about, the more cost you're paying for that survey. Okay, that kind of goes through title and surveys. Objections. Oh, I've used my hour, huh? We'll kind of breeze through these. Paragraph 62. Membership in Property Owners Association. This is just whether or not it is or is not subject to a mandatory homeowners association. If you're in a neighborhood that has a voluntary homeowners association, check is not here.
Okay.
Because it's voluntary. We've had them where they come in as is.
Okay, because the paragraph says mandatory.
Yes, it does say mandatory. So voluntary, that buyer may not choose to participate. So you don't have to have the HOA addendum and try to get a resale cert. Just it's either mandatory or it's not. We have a whole class on the HOA addendum, which is a great one. So we can almost do that down the road. Paragraph 60, 3, 6, and 7 go over MUDs, PIDs, and tax districts. That's its own class. I won't even try to get into those today. There's a link on there to our calendar, and JT can also provide y'all, and Haley can provide y'all information about those classes as they become available. Interested? Has anybody dealt with a property that has a private transfer fee? No. Okay.
What is
Not in Texas.
having to deal with the special utility district?
I'm sorry. No, private transfer fees are totally separate.
I mean,
For,
give me an example.
You would know. You would
Okay.
You're
know.
like, you would know.
You would know. So the private transfer fees can probably be their own class too. I haven't done one for that because I'm still learning about them. They're not really new in Texas. They actually are outlawed. They're illegal in Texas now,
Okay.
but there is a window of time where they're grandfathered in. So there's some neighborhoods. We see it a lot in Collin County. We've seen it in Tarrant County, where the developer, when they developed the neighborhood, they set up private transfer fees. And there's a document filed in the deed records that says this property is subject to private transfer fees. And every time that property is sold, from developer to builder, builder to buyer, and then we start going down,
Right.
there is a 1% fee paid to the developer.
I mean, I was just kind of using an
so they
example.
continually get paid.
Yeah, because I was kind of like, for example, like Lantana, that wouldn't be the.
Lantana had a private transfer.
I was
Like
Lantana.
in Lantana, you have your taxes plus your what they call infrastructure fees.
They had a private
Oh,
transfer
right.
fee.
Right. And
So
then like,
you've experienced.
yeah, well, I mean, I've sold in Lantana and then, yeah, so I guess that, and then like some of the lake properties, some of the lake properties are like on 99-year lease agreements, but like Lake Weatherford is on a 30-year license agreement. So it's a 1-year term that's renewable every year. It is well, Lake Weatherford's real complicated. I've only found like 1 or 2 lenders that will lend on, and like I had to find some good old boy in Graham, Texas that worked for Graham Savings and Loan to be like, I'll do it. And I was like, okay, great.
So private transfer fees, usually the seller has no idea that the private transfer fee even exists. It's a surprise. If you ever get a private transfer fee, your title company will call you and say, hey, we found that this property has a transfer fee. Call on it. Call me.
Yeah, I have a image in.
Just call me.
Yeah. And then the last slide.
And we're out of time.
Oh, good.
11:30. Maybe?
It's not like.
They're still on there, right?
Yeah, Rich going.
Alito, yeah, okay. Kelly Ranch and Alito might be this private transfer fee.
I just was in there.
Oh, I did.
I would have to-
Well, I didn't.
It was some neighbor.
That
I
was my
was in
connection.
there and I don't
Yeah.
remember anything about
They
it.
have
Oh,
a
no.
transfer fee, but not a
Not,
private.
yeah,
That's
I don't
where my
think so,
power
yeah.
is stored.
Cause I was like, I didn't.
Something to do with
I didn't
neighbor.
cross, yeah. Except for values are not like.
To your network, not
they
mine.
wanted to-
So my network, yeah,
There was one that was.
where my data is stored. So it's working locally, it's just not working where it says.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, somebody just kicked me out.
Keep you.
The last one was just over, mold remediation. Be sure if your property has had mold remediation, that the seller provides the, information for any service that's been done in the last 5 years. And it also covered, one of the things I thought was interesting, I was reading it yesterday and I had to call J.C. Johnson, who's our attorney that we with. And he was telling me that, here we go. Notice of water level fluctuations, if you dealt with lakefront properties. This paragraph basically says that if the property is located next to a lake or a large body of water, that the water levels can change.
Yeah.
And you think, well, duh, everybody kind of knows that.
People
Well,
get mad about it.
they do. And this paragraph came from a lawsuit in which the buyer sued the seller and the realtors for promoting the constant level of the lake and calling it as advertising that there's constant waterfront. And there was no, and then, if y'all remember Lake Granbury a few years ago, it was basically empty. There was no more waterfront.
Right.
So just beware of.
Well, I think that paragraph would be important also because, I mean, one, drought, and two, with all the people moving in here, and these lakes are really a water source. They're not just for entertainment. It's like what Lake Weatherford has that. They get water out of Lake Benbrook. Benbrook's full, and Weatherford, my mom owns a property there, and I mean, we're way low. It makes no sense, and people are getting really upset about it.
Yeah, so just be careful of that. And then it also covers if there's, and I've never seen one of these, maybe y'all have, a property located where propane gas is supplied by a specific company. So I kind of use the comparison to an electric or water co-op where they don't have a choice. They have to use that. So the seller's legally required for that. That's it.
We got your QR code though.
I'll get it. Let me get it. JT, did you send me the QR code?
Yes, I emailed it. I emailed it to you.
So I have a question. I registered, but I think I paid what I've had to have paid.
No, we are about to pay.
Okay, so I just registered, gonna be like a Venmo.
She's gonna give her just a second to pull it up. Everybody will get a chance to
I
pay.
had $10 charge around the same time, so I was like, maybe I already paid.
No, we weren't, it wasn't part of the registration.
Like, I don't know what I paid for.
Oh, you paid for mine.
Okay, good.
You're good, thanks.
It was Cowtown Title. Who's that? 'Cause I don't remember taking a,
Countdown?
yeah. That's how it went.
Go to some other.
I don't think so.
Huh.
That's why I was like, well, maybe it shows up as a.
Did you order?
I think so. Where's Cowtown? I don't know. I don't know Cowtown.
It's easier for JT to send it to me. JT, can you email to Brian at 6 Ave?
Yes, sir.
Oh, it's the title.
Tammy.
It may be quicker to do it that way. Oh, she's got it. Never mind, she got it. Okay, so everybody, online, can you all scan that? And that's how you pay for your CE. Can we thank Autumn for doing this for us? This was great. Great
I
information.
feel like you're extremely intelligent.
Oh,
Like
well,
when you
thank
speak
you.
and everything, like it's very easy to follow.
Thank you. I wanted to be a teacher when I grew up.
Oh, you have Venmo? I don't have PayPal.
I'll do that.
You've been mailing.
JT, can they pay by Venmo?
I need to double check. I know that PayPal for sure.
Oh, and I lost that.
I don't have PayPal.
I'm gonna log into PayPal.
I'm not doing that.
Hang on, Patty, hang on.
I'm not doing PayPal.
Is that Jim? Hi, Jim.
Yeah,
I don't have PayPal.
Okay, then, yeah, if y'all want to just, I'm gonna drop my information in the chat and then I can just get in contact with everybody.
I do.
You have my.
That may be the, yes, yeah, that may be the easiest way to go about it.
Do you let me?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
There's three different
What
ones.
was
There's
it
an
called?
acre,
Survey
a
and-
1.7.
This is paragraph 6.
Yeah, paragraph six.
Hang on, I'll
Paragraph
tell you
six.
about how that area is gonna wanna know.
Hi, I can help you.
Can you see it?
We know.
There we go.
Does anyone have a white Lexus parked in the driveway?
I do, I'm sorry, I was gonna ask if it was okay. And then you were already.
How do you look, cute?
Oh, I didn't.
Thank you so much.
What's it called, paragraph 6?
I think that's what it,
Two,
yeah, I think that's what they, I'm gonna verify before I.
6106.
Yeah, I was like, who?
I mean, that's what we talked about, so.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's right, right?
That's right.
Not, yeah.
Okay. What is
That's a healthy boundary. That's not me.
We are thinking.
$10
That we
to,
can-
oh, never mind.
That's me.
That's you.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the name?
How do I-
Did you see that?
Are we?
Let's see. Yeah, if you want, you can either, you can DM me there or you can shoot me a text and, I'll see,
Oh,
yeah, I'll
sweet.
see if they're okay with doing Venmo. If not, then, yeah, I know that, but
Rachel,
when we
just
pay
did it.
out, I can, yeah, I'll take care of you guys.
Yeah, we've been having papers for a long time.
Yeah, we have.
She said,
Yeah, you don't have to have a PayPal account. You can just, where it says log in.
Okay.
There's a check out as guest, and it'll just let you put your card information.
That's perfect. Well, they have upgraded on me. It's a good deal. All right.
No.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so great to meet you in person.
it's a $10 one, right?
So, yeah, no, I know. I just assumed that, I just assumed whenever I open this text, I don't get a reply. It's like, you know what? I'm sure, yeah, she's good.
Are we,
Yeah, you too.
is this a new code? Like, what are we doing? Is there a Venmo or something that we're sharing?
No, so you can check, click on the link, but you can check out as a guest. You don't have to have a PayPal account.
Okay. Check out as it. Yes.
Does everybody have the link now? We all still need it.
I have a PayPal. The other link or is
This link. She said you can check out as a guest
Mhm.
and not use PayPal.
Where do you, okay, there's,
So, they'll still get it.
Yeah.
It didn't, have driver's license.
where do you check out as a guest? I guess I'm seeing,
Put in your card info.
Doesn't give you the option.
I mean,
Oh, yeah. Are the options?
so when you go, it says check as,
Scan the QR code, maybe not.
Sorry.
Okay, everybody get paid?
I've been
I
using.
want
You finished text?
I just,
and the-
Yeah, my number's in there, so.
instead of logging in, you just press, like right here, it says Apple Pay or pay with debit or credit card. So when it gives you a login, just select the other option.
I did, and it says we're currently disabled.
Yeah,
it says
I
this
don't-
field is required for check-in or pay with to pay for a CE course, and you either pay PayPal or check in person.
I just pay with Apple Pay. I don't know what happened. I don't know.
You just pay, look what mine.
Well, because you logged into PayPal.
I
So
did
you're supposed to
it.
say, I need to pay for CE.
Whenever I did it to just log in as a guest, it says, looks like you already have it.
No, you don't log in as a guest.
I did log
Yeah,
in.
that should
But
be
you
fine.
don't do that.
Can I Venmo you?
See where it
Yeah, no
says
problem.
here, don't log in. Click on it.
I did. Pay with credit.
I think
Somebody
it
did
should be
whenever,
by-
I went to
By
that
phone
car.
number, so yeah, if you just get a Venmo, then we'll see
Why does it say Apple Pay?
contacts.
Well, then I did, so I gotta redo that whole thing.
Yes,
again.
it's JT 3209. And that's me. Yep, that's me.
Does somebody online want?
Yep, that's it.
I do.
I have $10.
He's on Venmo. What are you?
Yes. It's
Have to upload
JT 3209.
What's the last ordinance?
6106.
Can you send,
Paid right there. So that's-
where's that?
So if you go through it and you go to the PayPal, it'll say just pay Apple.
AT gross?
And the last six is 610, or the last four is 6106.
Did you go as PayPal?
6106, Nathan?
Yes,
Yeah.
610.
Just go to the bottom. So.
All right.
There.
You got his?
Thank you.
Okay, I'm paid.
They put in little faces looking at it. going,
Yes, both packaged and both paid.
I missed the Venmo thing. What was the
Thank
Venmo?
you.
It's in the
Well,
chat.
It's in the chat.
Oh,
Uh,
great.
Jen,
Thanks.
That's
And
right.
what's the name of this class title
Paragraph
survey?
6. Paragraph 6.
Okay, paragraph 6. Okay. All right.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
y'all
guys.
so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate
Sorry, I
y'all.
spilled water all over you.
That's okay. Somebody spilled my water yesterday, so it must be a good thing.
Thank you so much. Good to see you.
It was awesome. It was awesome.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you.
All right, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and turn the video off. So you guys, thank you for joining. We'll see you next week for contract update. And bye, y'all.
Thank
That's
you.
where somebody else, they can pay cash.